Education has played and continues to play a critical role in the development of Chinese civilization. In China, the educational stories of Confucius and his 72 disciples remain popular to this very day. Confucius was the first Chinese to systematically advocate education for all. He believed that talent should be cultivated regardless of class and wealth. Only by means of education could talent be cultivated and beneficial social values promoted. The precepts of the White Deer Grotto Academy embody the essence of Oriental civilization and its educational tradition. More than 1,000 years after Confucius died, a great educator in the early Southern Song dynasty who revered and carried forward the educational thoughts of Confucius wrote down the basic principles underlying his approach to humane education. The result was Precepts of the White Deer Grotto Academy. It went on to become central to academic disciplines and academies in China and other East Asian countries. Moreover, it became the cornerstone of education for future generations. That disciple of Confucius, the author of the seminal text, was Zhu Xi. Late in the 6th year of the reign of Zhu Xi in the Southern Song dynasty, the year 1179 AD, a group of people appeared in front of some weed-infested ruins at the southern foot of the Wulao Peaks in Lushan, Jiangxi province. The old man leading their way was none other than the great Confucian Zhu Xi, at that time prefect of Nanking Military District. Despite the chill of the late autumn, 50-year-old Zhu Xi was already in a sweat. Compared with the thriving Buddhist and Taoist ashrams on Mount Lu, the dilapidated state of the once famous White Deer Grotto Academy made Zhu Xi sorely grieved. Right away, he asked his entourage to survey the site and record their findings. On his return, Zhu Xi immediately requested the restoration of the White Deer Grotto Academy to its former glory, and he then got busy drawing up plans for the new, reconstructed academy. In fact, ever since he'd become an official in Nanking, he'd encountered many obstacles in his efforts to bring officials into line and improve the lives of the common people. What's more, now that he was 50, he knew that he'd have to hurry if he was ever going to fulfill his educational mission, the only thing that really counted for a serious Confucian.
我觉得这一帮理学家呀，他有一种使命感，也有一种很深的书院情结。他们要做书院，做成书院的复兴运动，有他们这个很多的深意在里头。一方面可以说是重建价值体验，收拾人心；再一个呢，就是要把理论上要构建出一个新的一套东西来，就是后来我们讲的这个程朱理学的这个大的系统。
Ever since taking up office in Tong'an, the promotion of education had been Zhu Xi's #1 concern. As sub-prefectural registrar, the state of local learning was his responsibility, and he took his educational duties seriously, even giving regular lectures in person. These first ventures into popular education were an eye-opening experience. In his first class, he outlined the classic Analects of Confucius.
这个呢，是发现所有人都听不懂，然后非常的麻木，没有任何的表情。他当时就感到当地的文化是非常落后，这里是那种文化的不毛之地，所以他想要改变这样一个文化现状。那怎么去改变呢？就新现学，然后要明教化。
So perturbed was Zhu Xi by the barren mental landscape on display that he was driven to issue 3 statements to the scholars, to all students, and all matters concerned. Each of these was an exhortation to pursue learning for the sake of moral cultivation rather than for fame and money. Lacking good tutors in the county school, Zhu Xi searched hither and thither for learned Confucian scholars willing to do their bit to revivify learning in the county. Another big challenge was the library. Thanks to years of chaos and war, the collection had been decimated. So Zhu Xi wrote to the prefecture chief of Cangzhou to replenish the collection with 985 volumes of Confucian classics. The donation of a further 36 volumes brought the book collection of the county school to more than 1,200.
以前的教学目的，那个培养的就是大家要去当官做老爷，要去发财，参加科举。他还不是这目的，还不是这个，他是说要培养学生啊，要有就是说修齐治平这样的一个人格，要成为治理国家实用的人才。
Passing the highest imperial examination was notoriously difficult. Kinmen Island across the sea from Tong'an produced more than 50 presented scholars in the years after the Southern Song. Even today, Kinmen people believe that Zhu Xi played an indispensable role in transforming the small island into a renowned centre of culture and education, capable of producing so many eminent scholars. The island's Zhuzi Memorial Temple was built to honour the Confucian master that changed Kinmen. The temple's Wuyi Academy regularly invites well-known scholars to preach the foundational tenets of China's ancient civilization. Today we have Chao Yangpan, professor of Taiwan Normal University. He's been studying the Confucian histories of the Chinese mainland, Taiwan and Southeast Asia.
为政者最重要的事情，你要为民谋幸福啊！你要蔡氏宗祠，蔡氏宗祠2个墙壁，忠孝廉洁4个大字。忠孝廉洁是谁的？朱子写的。朱子之后的金门就跟以前朱子之前金门就不一样，因为这个时候的金门就进入到一个文教的历史。
因为当时金门也是属于同安县所管辖的。 所以在朱熹的教化之下，金门也受到很大的影响，因此历代以来，对于教育这项工作都非常的重视。我们现在所在的这个琼林蔡家，他在明代短短的60几年时间里面，他出了5位进士。
After leaving his post in Tong'an, Zhu Xi led a secluded life in the Wuyi Mountains. For 20 years, he devoted himself to Neo-Confucianism, writing books, and setting up schools to educate people. Halfway through the year 1165 AD, a young man came to Wufu where Zhu Xi was living in seclusion. He'd come to respectfully ask the 36-year-old Zhu Xi to be his tutor. That man was Tai Yuandian, later to be ranked first among Zhu Xi's 4 famous disciples. During their talk, Zhu Xi was pleasantly surprised by Tai Yuandian's extraordinary style of conversation, and he regretted not to have known the student earlier. Taken by the encounter with the young man, Zhu Xi wrote a letter to a friend in which he extolled Tai's wide knowledge of Confucianism and his great potential.
这个蔡元定的话呢，因为他只比朱子小15岁，对吧？而且的话呢，他们这本身的话呢，这个他也非常善于思辨，所以他刚刚到朱熹那来拜师的，朱熹跟他一交谈，他就是说你这个不应该算我的弟子，对吧？这个他就是我应该是我的老朋友了，对吧？不应该算我的这个弟子，就是对他是，也对他很尊重的。确实的话呢，他在朱门中的地位的话呢，这个应该说在他的时候他是最高的啊。 后来的很多学生来的话，首先是跟到蔡元定在里面的话，他来就代替朱熹来指导，后来才引荐给这个朱子。他不但是朱子的学生，确实也是在相当层面是朱子的助手。
他俩之间呢，虽然有明确的师生之分，实际上呢，也有亦师亦友的关系。 关系。
In the summer of the year 1175 AD, Zhu Xi named the second academy he established. It was to be called Yuelu Thatched Cottage. To ensure that it was in easy reach, Zhu had it located between his first academy, Hanquan Retreat, built 5 years earlier, and his residence at Wuyi. With its green peaks rising high into the sky, Yuelu Mountain is truly a world of clouds. It was here, whenever the clouds swirled over the mountain, that Zhu Xi would meditate and ponder philosophical problems. The newly built Yuelu Thatched Cottage and Taiyuanding's Xishan Thatched Cottage were close, facing each other across different ridges. Close both intellectually and personally, Zhu Xi and Taiyuanding were soulmates. Whenever they encountered difficulties during their intensive bouts of reading and writing, they would signal to each other with a red lantern so that they could meet and discuss their problems. The red lantern colloquies that resulted have become the stuff of legend in China's intellectual history. In point of fact, discussion had always been central to Zhu Xi's academies. On the 2nd of June 2017, an archaeological class was held in the Mingluan Hall of Changsha's Yuelu Academy.
有的习武它虽然时间长，但是它变化不大。你比如说，西汉时候的我们挖土的这个手作。
现在因为很多都在讲这个课程改革创新啊，所以老师就让我们同学自己在私下做功课，然后自己讲 PPT， 老师再指出你的问题来说。
因为老师讲一遍的话，你就会忘掉，然后你自己做的话，基本上每一版每一个都是你自己做的，然后你自己印象就会很深刻。
我们知道现在很多人对我们当前的教育有一些批评，觉得存在一些缺陷。那么其实这些缺陷，我们觉得可以去发掘古代书院教育的资源，去弥补它。我们岳麓书院从2009年以来就实行了本科生导师制，这是借鉴中国古代书院，包括学长制，包括这种师徒制而实行的一种本科生培养的制度。那么在这种朝夕相处的基础上面，老师很了解学生，然后呢，实施因材施教，就是实施个性化的教育。我觉得这一点是我们现代教育所应该去很好的去从书院去吸取资源。
Modeled on Zhu Xi's approach, this discussion way of learning has now become standard practice in the Yuelu Academy. Here, it's normal for students to give a lecture while the teacher listens. Individualized teaching was another approach pioneered in Zhu Xi's academies. Of Zhu Xi's 4 most renowned disciples, Taiyuanding's expertise was in the Book of Changes as well as rites and rituals, so Zhu Xi mostly discussed the Book of Changes and rites of Zhou with him. Of his later disciples, Hanquan was the most knowledgeable. Zhu Xi focused on enhancing his systematic study of Neo-Confucianism and his practical skills. In the midwinter of the year 1175, 24-year-old Hanquan from Minxian County in Fuzhou trudged through the heavy snow to Wuyi. One ambition had set him on this long and difficult road: to learn from Zhu Xi. Zhu Xi was away when he finally arrived, but Hanquan was determined. He stayed put, enduring the bitter cold for 2 months until Zhu Xi returned in the spring. Once he had formally sworn himself Zhu Xi's disciple, Wang Gan didn't waste a second. He seized every chance to read and consult Zhu Xi.
黄干来拜师，这个是非常虔诚的了。他第一次来看到在拜见柱子，柱子刚好就不在，他就在那里等，经常就是坐在那里看书，就是睡觉的也不解衣服，就非常虔诚，也是非常的勤奋，就在那里读书读了3个月，然后再等柱子。
Wang Gan's eagerness to learn deeply touched Zhu Xi. He even went so far as to extol Wang Gan's persistence and diligence in a letter to a friend. Later, Zhu Xi married his beloved daughter to Wang Gan, and the two thus became father-in-law and son-in-law, as well as tutor and disciple.
黄干呢，就是跟他时间最长。 然后就是把他，把自己女儿最喜欢的女儿嫁给黄干。实际上，朱子最后你看也是把所有一切都托付给他，实际上就托衣钵了，就是交付给黄干。
事实上的话呢，在这个朱子去世后，这个朱门的，对吧？中心的话呢，就是黄干，啊，所以说的话，他在后来的10几年，他中心最重要的做了一件事的话，就是注写了朱子的形状。 这个10年的时候完成了初稿，后来又不断的修改，到他去世之前的话呢，才正式的话呢发表出来。所以这个朱子形状全面概括了朱子的一生，并且确定了朱子的道统的传承者的这个重要的地位。
Mount Lu in Jiangxi province is famed for its scenery and as the birthplace of many well-known figures in Chinese history. After living in seclusion for 20 years, Zhu Xi returned to public life as prefect of Nankang Military District. The demands of his new role, however, did not put an end to his educational mission. Although months had passed since the survey of the old site of White Deer Grotto Academy, there was still no reply from the imperial court to his petition to restore the academy. Zhu Xi thus decided to raise funds himself. From the white walls, grey tiles and tranquil yard of today's White Deer Grotto Academy, we can get a sense of how glorious it was during its heyday. In the year 1180, under Zhu Xi's leadership, the White Deer Grotto Academy reopened. By this point, more than 20 schoolhouses had been built and over 20 students enrolled. Before teaching commenced, Zhu Xi wrote to a new friend, Luoyou, who was in charge of Jiangxi province, asking for some Confucian classics. Luoyou responded right away with offers of support, and with that, the Neo-Confucian master and a significant poet of the Southern Song, united by common ideals, began a friendship that would last until the end of their days. But there was something else that Zhu Xi needed to do before he could get the school up and running, to distill the essence of Confucian ethics to guide his teaching. The result was Precepts of the White Deer Grotto Academy, a work that would guide his educational mission.
朱子是把他读的中国的典籍，就孔孟的经典，把它浓缩变成白鹿书院学规。这个白鹿书院学也反映朱子自己本身对于教育的一个基本的信念。
In Zhu Xi's opinion, the top priority of academies was to cultivate integrity, lofty character, and practical skills. Precepts of the White Deer Grotto Academy retained its place at the heart of Chinese academies for more than 800 years.
从此以后，朱子的白鹿洞书院的揭示，就成为中国历代书院的纲领。历代书院的办学的纲领，基本上都是按照朱子的白鹿洞书院揭示来做的。
它总共分成5条嘛。第一条，为学的目的，就是摘录自《孟子·李裸篇》啊，它里面讲什么？ 就讲父子有亲，君臣有义，夫妇有别，长幼有序，朋友有信。这5条用我们现在的话来讲吧，就是最重要的5种人际关系。所谓学者，所以学为人也。
Zhu Xi believed that the ultimate goal of academy education was to train talented people who could spread Confucianism, give assistance to people, and be of great use to the country. To this end, his academies would have to be flexible and innovative. They would have to be very different from the official academies. With that objective in mind, that summer he issued inviting successful candidates in the imperial exam to the White Deer Grotto Academy to study Confucian classics.
他就把这些他南康军所有的举人都召集起来，都是次年春天去参加进士考试的，集中培训。用我们现在话来说，应该是用的什么补习班还是提高班？但是他这个可能最主要的训练还不在于技巧，而在于他用理学的思想理念来做。认为在他看来，科举和这个书院并不是矛盾的。
他这样一个做法是非常聪明的，因为跟他朝夕相处，他就把理学的他朱子的这种理学的理念传播给他们，把他的知识的理念传播给他们，让他们去传道济民，让他们把代表了朱子，把他的理学的思想，把他的文化的理念，把他的教育理念传到全国各地。
As the greatest Confucian of his time, Zhu Xi was naturally the chief tutor of the White Deer Grotto Academy. But all the same, he never missed the opportunity to invite other scholars. In the second year after the restoration of the academy, Lu Jiuyuan, a famous scholar from Jiangxi province, came to visit Zhu Xi. Although they'd gone head-to-head in the Erhu debate years before, Zhu Xi still invited him to lecture. In early spring, Lu Jiuyuan began his teaching by illustrating the Analects of Confucius. Using many examples, he explained how and why a gentleman always pursues righteousness without thinking of the benefits. Vile characters, on the other hand, always put benefits first, but may in the end be harmed by these benefits. It was a performance that moved many to tears, including Zhu Xi himself.
当时呢说天气已经微凉了，可是呢他这个君子喻义，小人喻一利，说讲到每个人都当场的人都在这个反求诸己，都在反省，虽然天气很凉了，可是大家都面红耳赤，因为都觉得自己做的不够好，都有这个缺陷，离圣人的教诲都有差距，以至于呢感觉热的还要扇扇子。所以这个也是宋代这个知识分子他们之间交往的一个佳话，也堪为后人的这个楷模。学术思想可以有分歧，但是呢相互尊重，相互切磋，相互磨砺。
When the lecture ended, Zhu Xi asked Lu Jiuyuan to go boating on Luoxing Lake at the bottom of Mount Lu. On the peaceful lake and under the clear sky in early spring, Zhu Xi began to see Lu Jiuyuan as his bosom friend. Indeed, he couldn't help exclaiming, "The water and mountain have been there since the birth of the universe. But have there ever been any talents like us before?"
从有天地以来，这山水都在。还复有此家客否？有没有像我们两个这么有才华的人，这么杰出的人来过？
Not long after, Zhu Xi asked his disciples to write up Lu Jiuyuan's lecture and inscribe it onto a stone tablet. He also wrote a preface in person. Today, that stone tablet still stands in the White Deer Grotto Academy. Zhu Xi not only injected a brand new philosophy of education that combined openness, strictness, and free debate into the renewed White Deer Grotto Academy, but also managed to retain the Confucian essence within it. His achievement was to make academy education in the Southern Song dynasty a vital part of China's then system of higher education, one that encapsulated and promoted unique values.
所以，如果跟西方的教育历史比起来的话呢，如果把书院作为一个相当于大学这样的建制来看的话，那白鹿洞书院它本来就是叫做国学，国学就是国立大学，所以它的历史更早。中国教育史呢，应该说它的历史要比西方的那个历史要更早。你比如说，如果把这个太学看作国立大学的话，是吧？那我们在汉代就开始了。
In Neilong Village, Yuanxiao County, Fujian Province, a modern rural academy is coming into being. Lin Lusheng, the founder of the academy, has decided to follow in the footsteps of the scholars of ancient China. His idea of opening a non-profit rural academy in his hometown in 2016 came to him when he was studying as a graduate student in Guanghua School of Management at Peking University.
我们办这个书院呢，它是作为学校教育的一个补充它并不能代替学校教育书院本身它的存在的就是一种非正规的一种社会教育那它跟学校之间是一个互补的关系。像古时候，像朱熹像他们那个时候在做这个书院这种同盟教育的时候，他们也很注重孩子们去参与生活特别像古时候那家长那些很多小朋友他们都要参与劳作的，所以这个部分我们也是觉得非常必要把它重新建立起来。这也应该是一种同盟教育、同盟养正的一个过程嘛。闭上眼睛，从现在开始不能睁开眼睛，一点一点的慢慢走，不要说话。慢慢走，小心哈。然后呢，你们试着听一下，如果你们听到一种声音呢，就伸出一根手指头，看你们总共能听到多少种声音哈。好，现在开始。今天我们在做的一些事情呢，恰恰就是前人他们也一样在做的事情。比如朱熹当时他到乡村去办一个书院的时候呢，他就会把这个乡村的一些教育资源把它挖掘出来，比如乡村一些乡贤，然后大家有钱出钱，有力的出力为这个乡村教育的改善去做事情。
Of course, the idea of building an academy together with students was not originated by Lin Lusheng. As early as 800 years ago, when Zhu Xi was building his Wuyi retreat, he intentionally asked his students to join in. Jiaochu Stream stretches like a belt, and there's a very quiet place at the foot of Yinpian Peak. In the year 1182, Zhu Xi resigned from office and worked with his disciples to build the plain Wuyi retreat. His aim was to create a pure literary space in a tranquil setting of mountains and rivers. Wuyi retreat was located in the deep forest. Inaccessible to most people, it was the perfect place to meditate on natural laws and read. By then, Zhang Shi and Lu Zuqian, two of the contemporary Confucian sages, had passed away. It was then that Zhu Xi, at the age of 53, became Confucianism's greatest master.
当今道在武夷，这什么意思呢？就是说朱子所在的地方就是文化中心，他就是中国文化的一个代表。说白了就是这样。这个是了不得的一种评价，也是我觉得也是非常确切的。
Education at Wuyi Retreat was not as dull and formulaic as people might imagine. Sometimes gaining enlightenment between the mountains and the rivers was actually fun. Not far away from the retreat, the tea-tasting stone of those days still stands in the clear stream. People today are as delighted as ever when talking about stories of Zhu Xi and his disciples, ascending the stone, cooking tea, and discussing philosophical problems. The rhythmic whipping by the tea whisk and the light bubbles in the teaware create a colourful world in a small space, the tea kaleidoscope. This tea ceremony, popular among men of letters in the Song dynasty, has been made accessible to ordinary people.
茶百戏它又叫分茶、水丹青，它就是通过注汤和搅动的方法，就可以使茶汤的表面幻变出图案的一种独特技艺。宋代的这个理学家也非常喜爱点茶和分茶把它当成一个很高的娱乐手段说明茶呢，在当时的话，理学家的心中呢，也不只是一个口腹之欲，而是造成了一个很高的思想上的一个境界。
Zhu Xi loved tea grown in the Wuyi Mountains throughout his life. He not only planted more than 100 tea trees at the bottom of Yinping Peak, but also found pleasure in tasting tea with his friends while discussing philosophy. Zhu Xi also expressed his fondness for tea in his verses such as, "The Panglai fairyland lies above the Wuyi Mountains. The tea sapling I plant is one with a magic taste. Tea drinking refreshes me. Although the tea is not as smooth as that grown on the mountaintop, it also bears its distinct fragrance." Zhu Xi once said to his disciples, "Tea in itself is bitter, but it brings out a sweet aftertaste, and this is also a rule." One could even say that Zhu Xi's ideal state was to understand tea and life between the heavens and the earth.
可能在他一种格物穷理的关怀之下，他可能对于山水的领略就不是一种只是好像我们一般人去游山玩水的那种心态，他可能更希望在这种静谧的山水里面，体会到一种以天地万物合而为一的一种状态。
为什么要去关心？是因为他为了把儒家的经典用一种最好的方式、最完整的方式把它诠释出来，因此他必须对 儒家经典所涉及的所有的有关自然界的事和物，都要做一个清楚的了解。
In the ancient city of Luoyang, He Xi, a scholar of Zhu Xi, is holding a literati gathering with a group of young people who love traditional culture. Today's theme is the tight bond between the great Confucian Zhu Xi and the mountains and waters of Wuyi. They've just planned to travel to the Wuyi Mountains, the hub of Neo-Confucianism, to have a taste for themselves of the picturesque landscape that inspired and comforted Zhu Xi throughout his life.
我相信朱子大家极喜欢武夷山，而且那种武夷山，你去了以后你不喜欢它，老实讲还不容易。那种山山水水就非常像朱子里面，他喜欢讲理跟气，就非常讲到理气的关系。
朱子就是一生也是酷爱山水，更多的时候他在山林中来求道，来跟很多的朋友、很多的志同道合的相耳论学，是不是？来写诗。 来唱和。
Education of children is also an important part of Zhu Xi's notion of education. At the Wuyi retreat, Zhu Xi and his disciples compiled Primary Learning. This work primarily focuses on the early education of children. By teaching children basic ethics and to perform daily chores like sweeping the floor or receiving guests, children's moral character and self-reliance ability are developed at an early age. The proposal and the practice of systematic enlightenment education is one of the most distinctive contributions of Zhu Xi in Chinese educational history.
你教育啊，必须按照人的年龄的增长，对吧？认识的提升。 智慧的发展，小学的时候的话呢，他主要是学习了刷刷应对这个礼节
小学是应该说是一种最基础的言行举止规范的养成阶段。这个时候你不要跟他讲很多的道理，但是要在生活实践中间养成习惯。
Yuelu Academy, founded in the year 976, is the largest and best preserved academy complex in China. It's been through many wars, and it's been destroyed and renovated 7 times. As one of the oldest academies in the world, each towering ancient tree and every group of buildings testifies to the Chinese humanistic spirit refined through time. But unlike most ancient academies, Yuelu Academy remains very much alive as a functioning teaching and education organization. Today, another batch of students will graduate from here and become useful talents for society.
现在的教育比较重视知识的传授，那么古代书院教育，包括刚才说的百路洞书院学规，它里面所倡导的就是一种成人之道，是一种成德的教育。在这方面，我觉得我们也可以很好的从书院教育里面去吸取资源。
The reason for the Yuelu Academy being listed among China's 4 major academies is closely related to Zhu Xi's political resurgence in his later years. In the 5th month of the 5th year of Zhu Xi's reign, the year 1194 AD, Zhu Xi, at the age of 65, came to office again in what is now Cangzhou. Thus, he had occasion to set foot once again in the Yuelu Academy, which he had once visited together with Zhang Shi. By then, 27 years had passed since the sensational dialogue between the two, and although the 4 characters of loyalty, fealty, honesty and integrity were still standing in the hall, the academy had long been on the wane. The death of Zhang Shi and the decline of the Huxiang school of thought had accelerated the deterioration of the Yuelu Academy further still.
他当时有一个细节，就是去抽一个学生起来，要他讲解大学的一个含义。他觉得没有真正的去理解大学的那个内涵，他不太满意。他甚至有点生气，就觉得如果我们在这里这样读书的话，那不和当时官学没有什么区别了吗？所以呢，他就觉得应该去整顿当时的学风。
Zhu Xi was deeply grieved by the decline of this once reputable academy. Right away, he got to work on a series of countermeasures. Firstly, the precepts of the White Deer Grotto Academy, which he had written 15 years earlier, would guide the work of the Yuelu Academy. Meanwhile, that classic work of Neo-Confucianism, Annotations on the 4 Confucian Masterpieces, would be the primary textbook of the academy. Zhu Xi allocated funds to expand and repair the premises, and he significantly increased the enrollment of the academy. Within just a few months, Yuelu Academy had regained its vitality.
经过朱熹的这一番整顿，是吧？制度的建立、学规的建立，所以使这个岳麓书院它的这个在书院中的这个发展，是吧？就跟在那个朱熹没去过以前，那就大不相同。
The Caoting Academy, located south of the Wuyi Mountains, was the last academy founded by Zhu Xi in his later years. In the early spring of 2018, workers were busy on the construction site of the old Caoting Academy in Jianyang, restoring the renowned academy to its former glory. In the winter of the same year when Yuelu Academy was revitalized, Zhu Xi, at the age of 65, returned to Fujian province after a short stint in Linan, and, following his father's previous intentions, he carefully selected a site at the bank of the Mayang stream in Jianyang and established the Cangzhou Retreat, which was later renamed Caoting Academy. At the Cangzhou Academy, Zhu Xi was well aware of the rigidity of government-run academies and the drawbacks of imperial examinations. So, citing various authorities, he produced the evidence-based suggestions on reforming the education system, later to become famed all over the country. In this long article, for the first time, he systematically and comprehensively propounded his own educational propositions. He extolled the virtues of discipline-based curriculum, initiating a range of disciplines that included ethics, Confucian classics, schools of thought, history, and current affairs.
我觉得朱熹在晚年他这个教育上，我认为他更完整的应该是学校供给私义的那里边提一个思想，那里边实际上已经开始在批评当时那个科举的那种八股。那时候虽然没有叫八股，但是那种风气已经有了。啊，朱熹呢在学校供给私义当中也进行了一些批评。
He wanted, first of all, education to be much more centered on the 4 books and on the ethical lessons in those 4 books, instead of focusing on traditional sort of civil service examination questions. So I think their whole educational focus in the academies, like the one here at Yuelu had a kind of urgency about them that they felt was missing.
Although he sharply criticized the rigidity of the imperial examinations in the southern Song dynasty, his works were later regarded as standard by all dynasties. As a matter of fact, Zhu Xi, in his later years, emphasized that students should learn from all schools of thought and devote themselves to the application of what they had learned. He urged students to focus on understanding and reasoning, to dare to question, to seek the truth of virtue and morality, and not just memorize texts and master rhetorical techniques.
最主要的呀，在修身养性、待人接物、处事，就是一个人的一个个人的修为啊，这个方面，其实这种东西，无论社会发展了什么。 这是一个更重要的，个人的修养、个人心神的修炼、个人怎么成人，无论社会在哪一个时代都躲不过的一个主题，所以它的意义，我觉得是可以超越时间、跨越朝代。
On this day, a student from Cangzhou of southern Fujian appeared at the Cangzhou retreat. His arrival overjoyed Zhu Xi. Almost 10 years had passed after their last meeting, and to Chen Chuan, although Zhu Xi had by now become old and had difficulty in walking, his hearty spirit and loud voice were just the same as ever.
陈纯呢，他是漳州人。朱熹呢，他60出头的时候到漳州做太守的时候，漳州的很多学子啊，就来听讲课来学习。陈纯呢是比较突出的。
陈纯算在这几个弟子当中，在朱子身边时间比较短，但是陈纯呢，看起来天资很高，对朱子的很多思想的理解是非常得到朱子的认可。
At that time, inspired by powerful officials, voices were being raised in opposition to Zhu Xi's ideas. Many were condemning them as false. The situation was getting very difficult, so the pair mainly discussed ways for the Cangzhou Academy to carry forward Neo-Confucianism despite the hardships.
因为他们见面也不容易，一旦要见面的话，那都是彼此之间积累了很多的想法、问题之后见了面，然后谈，那抓紧时间吧。
那陈纯呢，他是在实际的那个学术理论的那个传承中，他做了很多的工作，特别在他的讲学里头，是吧？这个贯彻这个朱熹的思想。
Chen Chuan soon composed an explanation of Zhu Xi's Neo-Confucian thoughts, which would become the standard introductory work to Zhu's Neo-Confucianism.
百戏之意，薄薄的一本书，但是这本书就把朱子的思想的要点简明扼要的点明了。而且陈纯这个人呢，一生也不做官，他就在乡村教学，培养了大量的学生，这是一个非常重要的人物。
Chen Chuan also wrote Enlightenment reading and other works inspired by Zhu's ideas. As Enlightenment reading could be easily understood, it would continue to have popular appeal for generations to come.
陈诚的教育观呢，其实与朱熹的教育观呢是一脉相承的。从他所写的启蒙书状当中，我们就可以看出，例如四五章，真纯义，父子亲，他就起自朱熹、白鹿洞、苏样，皆是父子有亲，君臣有义。只不过是因为孩童，语句太长记不住，把有字去掉，改为三字而已。
Zhu Xi put painstaking efforts in the last 6 years into the Cangzhou Academy. He and Tai Yuanding wrote a note on the kinship of the three. With Wang Gan playing the leading role, Zhu encouraged scholars from all over the country to compile the classic, The Explanation on the Text of Rituals and its Commentaries. He instructed Cai Shen, one of his 4 major disciples, to write Shu Ji Zhu Han, explaining the ancient classic The Book of History in detail. Furthermore, a compendium of meditations on the theory and practice of academy education was gradually perfected during this period. As the birthplace of the famous Caoting School, the Caoting Academy brought together Zhu Xi students from all over the country, up to 215 of them. This is why the Zhu Xi School is also called the Caoting School. Justly does Zhu Xi deserve the accolade of being the Chinese educator with the highest number of descendants after Confucius. This ascetic, who wrote more than 20 million words compiled into 600 volumes in the course of his life, left behind an extraordinary legacy whose influence continues to be felt in Chinese thought and education.